and your planet are being intentionally destructed for profit.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TFTuesday Podcast. My name is Zill. It's good to have you all back here again today. It has been a challenging week for me, but that is okay because apparently that was in sync with the weather we got, because we had one day where it snowed, and then the following day it was almost 68 in freedom degrees, or 18 in Celsius.
Why not repent to you, Redwalls? You and your planet are being intentionally destructed for profit. How does that make you feel to be destructed against your will?
So that was wonderful whiplash, and it very much felt like pathetic fallacy to me.
You need to repent to you, Redwalls. Some whispers of repentance in downtown Boston today. As tens of thousands stretched betwixt Boston Common and City Hall Plaza to say hands off, the rain clouds will continue. I'm
joined by my illustrious co-host k-libra. How you doing, k-libra?
Doing as best as I can still, and I gotta say that one of the things I've been really happy with this week is a new game that was gifted to me again by Honey Bear. They keep buying me fucking games. I mean, I got so many things to play. It's called Haste, and it is just a game that is essentially the Sonic 2006 Mach Speed sections, but if they were fucking amazing. It's beautiful, it's charming, it feels great to play, it's very challenging in just the right ways. God, I just want to show that game off. I did, I actually streamed it a little bit for the first time on my own Twitch channel.
Nice.
Just to a couple friends, though. I'm not expecting to make a career out of this shit, but I do like streaming sometimes. But anyway, yeah, I've been enjoying that, and I just... Yeah, and other than that, I still got some other things coming up. I don't know if I mentioned that I worked the election last time on this show, the provincial election.
You did, because you were talking about your cloak, I remember.
Yeah, but I'm going back into that fray, this time for the federal shit. It's going to be big, because it's federal. But yeah, that's fun. I like that.
That is big.
Yeah, I think to most people, maybe that would sound like kind of off-putting, but it's really some of the most honest work that I've ever done in my life, and that's why I don't resent it, even if it's an extremely long day.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that, with the continued importance of democracy, it's important that we have people who facilitate those exercises in democratic voting. So...
Yeah,
I think it's pretty important.
Because the oligarchy definitely doesn't want anybody to be free and or have money to join our Patreon. See, that's one of the most evil things they could do is deny us patrons. People should be able to live comfortably enough to say, let me give them like $5 a month or something like that. But they're taking that liberty away from everybody. And, everybody should live a comfortable enough life where they can be like, yeah, $5 a month to these guys because I listen to their stuff regularly. I don't mind it because man... Why?
Were you fired from your .gov weather position today? Don't you think it's time for meteorological vengeance?
Why should they do that to you? We need to stop them. We all need to stop them. And honestly, as corny as it sounds, that's also kind of what got me into wanting to work the elections in the first place. On top of looking for steady work, I also just looked at that and said, hey, that's a worthy cause. Keep that shit going. Lots of people think that this stuff isn't worth doing until stuff like in the United States happens. So, yeah, if it wasn't for people like Donnie Trump and Eloyd and fucking, the guy who has two initials and then a weird last name, you could have joined our Patreon maybe. But I don't know. Let's see what you can do. Be a fucking rebel.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because we have a friend of the cast here joining us today as a special guest, and I've had the opportunity to chat with him a few times about some writing-relating things, and so it's really good to have Geo on board with us today. So, Geo, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, yeah, I am GeoHolms. I'm a raccoon from the internet. Just scampering around, point to point, day by day, chewing on creative stuff, so, yeah. I'm doing my thing.
Heck yeah.
Oh, and you might know me mostly from Raccoon, Red News Book Cap, Blue Vest, and Hula Hoop TF stuff.
It's pretty distinctive, I would say.
It's pretty neat. It's funny. You say he's a friend of the podcast. First time speaking with you, so that's going to be good too, because I've heard some of the stuff that you've talked about, like just briefly, but it's one of the things that keeps me interested in what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, glad to discuss.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm excited for some of the stuff we have upcoming to chat about. But before we get to the wonderful topics that make the world go round in your TF universe, I was curious to hear a little more as to how you found yourself making your way into the TF fandom as a whole.
Oh, geez. I mean, I think it's kind of just inevitable because I like TF as long as I can remember. And so it was inevitable. Like, I was just looking up random terms, and I ran to thing like the TSA, Transformation Stories archive site and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I was always on the perimeter of TF just because I was looking up phrases like "turned into a squirrel" in quotes to try and find things and everything. And it was just... And it was like, and once I got into the furry fandom, it just kind of went in from there. I was very much a lurker of the TF stuff for a long time. And I was in the Redwall fandom, and then I wandered into the furry fandom from there, and then more in the TF from there.
What's Redwall?
Oh, the Redwall is the Redwall series by Brian Jakes. It is a kind of medieval flavored world of just woodland creatures. There's goodies, there are baddies. It's a bit too black and white silliness, but I mean, I really enjoyed it growing up. I really got into middle school, and I got into like the Redwall fandom of just like online Redwall community of people who also like the books and who were also critical of how black and white the morality was of the series, because all of us were like, because supposedly the foxes and weasels and rats were the baddies, and the bunnies and the mice and squirrels were the goodies and stuff like that, and all of us were like, no.
I can understand
that. Much cooler. Yeah, the bad guys were always cooler. They had the much more personality. They were much more interesting, and that was it was a very engaging series. It has flaws, but we had a lot of fun playing off it and writing stuff about it and just having fun, digging into it.
All right, yeah, sounds great. Hey, I can relate a little bit to that because frogs are enemies in so many games, even now. I remember when I was playing Hyper Light Drifter, and I'm just like, oh, there are frogs. And then there's an entire enemy frog clan, and they're incredibly brutal, and they enslave this entire other people, and they murder them and throw their corpses on piles, and they're savage. And I'm like, fuck. They wanted, that's unfortunate. But apparently, the world at least has, a different... just because you're a certain species doesn't make you that necessarily. I can understand the black and white can be a little frustrating, but sometimes that's what the story is, and either you like it enough or you don't. That's why, fucking.
I'm surprised you hadn't heard about it before, though. If only just because I feel like it's pretty ingrained with furry stuff, but you're not a furry, so that actually does.
What, Redwall?
So. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea what the fuck it is. I've never heard of it before.
Fair. I was gonna say to the black and white point, the author was Catholic, so
I'm just gonna leave that. Is weird. I never knew that. That is real. That enlightens a lot of things in those books, actually. I mean,
it really does. It puts a lot of things into perspective, and I will say that those books were in my school library, and I was always a little bit surprised by that because they can be a little more on the extreme end at times with some of the things that go on there. But once I learned that, I was like, oh, it all makes sense now.
I mean, it all revolves around Redwall Abbey, but then the same token, they try and remove the actual religious aspects from it. So it's really odd in that regard. So, it's interesting.
Yeah. I feel like an editor went a little edit happy, perhaps. But neither here nor there. But yeah, no, Redwall's great. I'm glad that that was an avenue in. And I guess to talk about another avenue in, I know that one of the things that you have focused a lot on, both in terms of providing defenses of it at ShifterCon or in other kind of areas, is the concept of Poof TF. And I guess I was curious to dig into that just as a topic as a whole, because I know it's something that you've spent a lot of time thinking about. And maybe we can take a step back and start with the basics. How would you define Poof TF, and what was it that drew you to it when you first encountered it?
I think Poof TF is either like it's essentially instant TF, and it's sometimes accompanied by a puff of smoke to kind of like obscure the visual aspects of the TF. However, it doesn't always have that puff of smoke. So so Poof TF is essentially instant TF.
I have a question then. You know that effect that is done in cartoons a number of times where or like say a character just becomes like silhouetted by like say a light or some kind of like shimmery effect, and then the outline changes and then it goes away and they are the thing. Do you count that as Poof?
Yeah, I would say that's Poof because it obscures the TF in a certain way. There is a slight visual, but it's still obscured by the smoke and the Poof.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to check the boundaries on that, because I would agree with that as the primary thing of it being something that makes it so that you can't see what happens to like the transitional effects of the body and all that stuff.
Yeah, like my go-to example of it is Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, when the lion is mostly shifted into a rabbit. Spoilers for Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, I guess, but like there is this element of where he's a giant lion and there's a puff of smoke and then he's just a small rabbit just flopped on the ground with just a lion tail, which also I think like highlights the fun aspects of that flopping out of the instant change, the transition like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes it gets. I mean, we'll get into some of the bad rap stuff, but I think sometimes people will complain that it's not like visually interesting, but there's actually a lot of really interesting visual stuff you can do in terms of what you do show versus what you don't show.
Yes, exactly. Like whether it be the change in size, the immediate reaction, or the immediate after effects.
Yeah.
I like the surreal aspect that people changing into instantaneously can be. What comes to mind immediately is the animated music video for Tom Hardy's Transcendental Cha-Cha-Cha, because there's these lyrics where he goes, blink, now you're an old French dandy, blink, now you're made of cotton candy, blink, now you're back in the club. And it shows that literally in the video. Is like, so he gets turned into these different things and it gets turned back in 2 blinks, and it like freaks him the fuck out. And that's awesome. And you couldn't really do that if he spent time like experiencing it or whatever. So that right there is just one small example of value that it can have.
Yeah, exactly. Like for visual, like when you don't have the time and you need it immediately for like whether pacing or like tonal things. Yeah.
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 I really appreciate. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, you first.
No, I was going to say I really appreciate it for that element, and I think that oftentimes you can just do a lot of really interesting stuff with it.
Mm-hmm. And like even another good example, it's funny because it was the first episode of Dexter's Lab that had the remote that could turn you into any animal. And that was just a bunch of poofing over and over and over and over and over again. And it was just absolute chaos. And that's one of the things that made the episode so much fun. Although, later on, they do have an episode called Mon's Story that I was actually sharing on my server in a call. And it actually has, like, process. You can see the animations of them transforming and stuff like that. And it's supposed to be kind of gruesome and everything. But it's so funny because they have like the chaos of just like, oh my god, you're a million different things instantly. And then the other one is like the entire episode they're changing more and more and more and more until it reaches the pinnacle of its like story and shit like that. But yeah, it's fun because that's, again, the thing that makes that first episode of Dexter's Lab so fun is that they were a million different things instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one lives rent-free in my head too. That was one of those that really stuck out to me that I just obsessed about for a while because I love that thing. Love that one with the remote and the back and forth silliness.
Yeah. There's a lot of zaniness you get to do. And then I guess, that kind of lends it to, because I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it, but I feel like it tends to get a bad rap specifically within like the transformation community, which it strikes me as a bit of strange. I know you've done probably a bit more thinking on it, but I was curious to know what you think it is that leads people to kind of go down that path of being like, oh, that's not really TF. Because I've heard that before, which, again, it seems absurd to me, but regardless.
I think that the change and like the being able to appreciate each part of the change is a major part for some people. I think maybe the case is it misses the point of TF for some people and their preference of TF. But I think it's like, I don't think you can say it misses the entire point, because for me, the changes are all on the back end, essentially. It's like you're immediately dealing with the aftermath. And I can understand why people appreciate that and focus on that, because there's a lot to explore in that aspect and in that journey from point A to point B. And I think the point A to point B of mentally go realizing you're something else is very interesting for me. And to immediately be in a new form of transitioning.
Yeah, because there's so much you have to like immediately process, and I feel like with a lot of like more drawn out transformations, you have at least like the semblance of time to get used to each thing as it's happening. I mean, obviously this is all relative. It's different if it's over a couple of months versus like a few minutes. But even then, you have a kind of opportunity to gauge the things that you are gaining, whereas with Poof TF, you're just gaining everything at once and you have to process it all at the same time, basically, including whatever potential mental changes you might have kind of undergone too.
Oh yeah, exactly. This may be somewhat on topic, but I will never find the story again. But there was a story I saw like over 10 years ago, but it kind of made fun of the transition aspect, where it was somebody turning to a German Shepherd, but they were focusing on every single bone and every single muscle of like the leg, and it just was like minutely every single little tiny piece, and it was just, and they were and it was like, and they didn't even get too past the leg, I think, before the story just kind of moved on. But it was kind of highlighting. I mean, no one ever does it like that minutely. I mean, some people may, but it was almost making fun of that, of the slow TF in some ways, in an amusing way. I don't know where I saw that though. Lost the time on the internet.
It exists somewhere. Maybe someone will let us know in the comments. You never know.
Down into the low to mid-40s. Chances of rain bulbs throughout your overnight hours. And maybe even a
It's news to me.
Oh man,
I know that there are people who want to really embellish on the things that they really, really, really like. I think that would be a good writing experiment to just painstakingly and very, like, I don't know, verbosely every single little thing happening to every little section until it's done. But that's the whole fucking story. That's it. You're just kind of like reading pretty much a play-by-play of sensation and visual, but nothing else. Yeah, it could be a good creative exercise.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting, and it could be well written in a lot of ways. But for me, I was a weird person who really loved the post-TF. I love the idea of a human becoming an animal, but then I would always love that post-TF, and there'd be so many TF stories in that time where I'm going to sound like a crazy person. I skip past the transition part, hoping there'd be some part of them as an animal at the end, and then there'd be one paragraph and the story would end. I'm like, no, come back.
I think that's a pretty understandable reaction.
Is it? Why do you think it's understandable?
Because I think like we all approach transformation from different lenses, and I can see why some people might be like, "Oh yeah, that's fine," and other people be like, "Wait, no, actually, that was the part I was looking for," you know?
Yeah, I get it. I just was wondering if there was like something in it for you. Like, do you see yourself doing that sort of thing too?
From a writing perspective.
I don't know about writing, but media in general, where you're just like, let's skip ahead, skip over that shit.
Oh, I don't think I'd ever want to skip over that kind of stuff. So, I mean, the process is a big draw to me. But that being said, I can I can appreciate when there isn't. If there's something there to be seen, I would like to see it. If it's not there, that's fine too. I don't mind just like continuing onwards, but I wouldn't want to like skip out on content per se, I guess, if it exists. And I think it depends on the artistic direction of whatever media it is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. It's just I don't know. I don't think there's been like a process where I wanted to skip over before. So hearing somebody just be like, yeah, my interest has nothing to do with that is interesting, I guess, just because of this. And yeah, the general thing is like, oh my God, it's Poof TF. But I also think those people need to chill the fuck out. If it's not in there, why are you complaining like you were denied something, please?
Yeah, that's very true. One other thing that I know obviously Poof TF lends itself well to is kind of post TF exploration, because you've just kind of been instantly changed into this new form, and you're trying to process all of the new sensations you have, the changes to mobility, all of that good stuff. Does your interest in Poof TF bleed into a want to explore more post TF reactions to like various different situations, or is it separate?
I mean, I think it bleeds into that a lot. I think because it skips immediately to the aftermath and the dealing with being a new form or creature or whatever, it really does bleed into that essentially. And I think, in talking about this, I think one of my major enjoyments, which is this is kind of like, is body swap TF, it comes down to sometimes. And because one of my first loves of like that TF adjacent was I really gravitated to various children's books and shows that had this element of somebody swapping with their dog. And with that, like, you're immediately thrown into a new body, a new form, and having to transition to that, essentially.
Right.
So, which is but like that element, that specific element of swap is very TF-y and post TF. And I think after time, like, I mean, I always love Poof TF at the same time, but I think the way that it skips to that post TF element is, I mean, it's the same reason I like swap.
Yeah.
Same reason I like Poof TF is it's a direct line to that dealing with a new form and being something else.
Okay, why do you like the tribulation of having a new body?
I mean, on one side, it's like I just think it'd be on the one side, it's like I just think it's neat. I just think it'd be really cool to deal with all these new bits and pieces of a new form, whether it be paws or tail or snout or just senses and sensations. And on the other hand, I really love the idea of characters dealing with a lack of control of a situation, and like or being out of control of them, or trying to find themselves after this transition, and like whether it be, and it's interesting to see them try and shift to that new status quo, and it's really interesting,
right,
character-wise, to see that play out.
So do you like the drama and the stakes, the personal growth kind of thing?
Yes, exactly. And like through peril and challenges, it highlights the new form.
Okay, so what were we gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, that I wanted to pick on that lack of control piece, because I think that's something that comes up in a lot of the different kinds of transformation scenarios that people like to gravitate towards. So it sounds like, to a degree, the post TF is, in kind of your sense, the best way, or one of the best ways, to explore losing that control, and that's part of the appeal as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say that when it comes to like post TF as well, in terms of like the things that you like to explore related to like, post Poof TF transformation, outside of the lack of control, are there any other things that you really like to focus on specifically?
Like I'm thinking. I mean...
Yeah, sorry. I know I just dropped that question on you.
Oh, you're good. Like, let me thinking. Oh, gosh. I derailed myself a bit there. But I mean, like, you're saying, like, how I use it in projects and stuff?
Yeah, like how you like to explore that concept within your own, like, writing and such.
I mean, actually, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know if in my writing I do a lot of instant TFs. like someone being one element and then another. However, I'm not sure if I actually, well, I mean, of course, but as I said, Poof TF does not have a puff of smoke. And a lot of times it's just somebody irrevocably shifts from one thing to another very fast, whether it be a line or a very short paragraph, or they instantly find themselves in another form. And I kind of just...
Right.
And I kind of, I use that as, like, that instant TF as an element to go right to that new form, essentially.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense to me. When it comes to Poof TF, just going back to Poof TF for a second, are there any specific scenarios that you find yourself coming back to when it comes to writing them out or crafting new stories where you know they'll feature quite prominently?
I mean, I like to play with it in a variety of ways, and I like. There's this one I keep going back to, like the staticky of like someone changing channels on a CRT TV is a fun way to transition instantly from one form to another, or like a flash, or just a shift or a flicker of like reality, like the things shimmer and they flicker into some other form. Like, I do play with how I describe that and how I play with it and how it happens, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of connects to why...
Nice.
Oh, did you?
Oh, go ahead. I'll hold the question.
And, I mean, this may be... Well, I mean, this kind of connects to why I fell into doing, like, getting Hoop TF stuff, is because I knew artists wouldn't really like doing Poof TF, but I also like... But, like, Hoop TF is a nice way to do, not necessarily an instant TF, but a fast TF with a transition in it. And it has kind of a visual flair to it. Also, I grew up with this short called Magician Mickey, which Mickey turns Donald into a variety of animals with a hula hoop. And that really stuck with my imagination since then, of just that instant falling through and being something else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of clever way to work in a type of a...
You need to repent to one of the lords.
Into a medium where perhaps an artist might otherwise not be all that interested in it.
So wait a minute. I don't know if I heard you right, but did you said that you wanted to commission Poof stuff because you think an artist might not like doing it?
I mean, this was long ago. Like, it's going to be odd. I don't actually commission too much TF stuff because I said, but I don't know. I don't know, like back when I was first commissioning, I just liked the idea of being one thing or another, but I didn't think artists would be very interested in just doing just the post TF. But I always loved the visual flair of like Hoop TF, so I decided to do that instead. It's kind of more visually interesting. I don't know, but then in the same token, I've seen so many artists, especially recently, do a lot of really cool visual flair with like Poof TF.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot less to... Yeah, there's a lot less to think about whenever you don't have to conceptualize how something is supposed to transition into something else and everything like that. So there's you can fill that with something else. So yeah, it's cool when you see people make the most of that. It's also why I don't mind it, because sometimes I see some stuff I'm like, oh, that was cool, that was neat.
Yeah,
it just goes when you're not spending time. You're not spending time trying to visualize intricate detail or something, or any amount of detail for something. You can have another kind of thought exercise and express that. So that's cool. Yeah, that's interesting that you thought that artists wouldn't be interested in that. But I guess this actually leads into another thing that I was thinking about, which was, I guess you already have like this impression that people didn't like the Poof stuff that you did? Because I mean, like, whenever you found that out, how did that make you feel?
I think that was why I was always, I can't remember the specific instance, but I always got that sense when I was like being like on the edges of like the TF fandom, that I don't know if it was a forum post or whatever, but I think even then I saw people complain about Poof TF existing or instant TF and why that's not real TF. And I don't... Yeah. And there was even like a podcast long ago that I saw, like when I was like, oh, a TF episode. This is 10 years ago. I'm not going to say the podcast, but it was like, I just remember that person specifically saying explicitly, TF with no transition isn't real TF. And that also was like, no. It kind of took the wind out of your sails. And I don't think it's as prevalent as anymore because I feel people appreciate the varieties of TF now. But I don't know, back when I was the very first poking my head in to see, I just got this sense that it just wasn't appreciated or liked.
Yeah. No, I will say that when I was making my own way into the transformation fandom, I definitely encountered that sense to a degree. I definitely think now it's a lot more chill. Like, people are kind of whatever about it. But particularly back when, like, the kind of demarker I think of is like back when transfer wouldn't let you post Pokemon TF to it. That would have been around the time that I think people were still kind of poo-pooing the idea of Poof TF being actually TF, which again I think is kind of like an insane statement to make, but I don't know. The aughts were an interesting time on the internet.
It's true.
I think now that Discord allows people to make their own camp, those people probably get to bounce that shit in between each other and their other safe spaces and shit like that. So they're probably still out there, but now they feel good that they can do something like cathartically complain, oh, this artist has done this again or hasn't done this, or this movie has this, but I'm disappointed because they did it, the Poof stuff, and wow, okay. Like, damn, make it yourself, like I do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I did want to make sure we also chatted a little bit about one specific thing that I have to bring up because I know it's a shared interest of ours. So I have to ask, why are the best Poof TFs ever made the ones in the Ratchet and Clank TV ads?
Oh my god. I feel like you're going to hate me. I've never played any Ratchet and Clank game except for like the newest one for like 20 minutes. However, I obsess about that commercial because it effectively sets up a really fun, silly setup and executes it in a really fun, practical way. And I really love that idea of just a bunch of friends messing with a silly TF plot device. The friend being like, how does this work? Having a puff of smoke and to have a chicken fall out of the smoke is such a fun heckin' visual. And also the aftermath of them, can we turn him back? Kind of deal, that lingering of the not thinking out the full consequences of the TF. It is, and them chasing the chicken around and you saying, Jerry, trying to capture him was like, it is the encapsulation in such a short amount of time. They completely like set up a really funny story situation and like lingering like kind of bad and ambiguous and silliness to it, and it's just really good. And I mean, all the other ones are really funny in the same way, like the mutator one where I don't even know that one. The cow kiss. I mean, they're not as strong, but it's silly. Yeah. I kind of wish they'd accidentally hit his friend instead. But it's like and also the one where they're actually aiming at a cat, which is what they should have been doing in the first place. And someone's mom,
and then they hit the mom
wanders
instead.
in and gets hit by the sheepinator. Like just existentially horrifying stuff, which is very silly and very funny and really captured my imagination. And on a side note, there is a Ratchet and Clank commercial on those same things that I can't rewatch again because it scared me as a kid.
Really? Which one was that?
It's the Shrink one. Because I can't go back to one. It freaked me the heck out because it's more explicitly bad endy than you ever would expect. And it really freaked me out a bit. Like, it captured my imagination in a bad way and it made me very uncomfortable. Like, I could describe it briefly
Yeah, no, I was going to say, maybe go ahead and describe it for those who are not aware of it.
I mean, I think that it's these guys, they're in the woods, it's at night, they're like, we're going to use a shrinking ray, and he's going to sneak in and see the girls' camp or something, and they shrink him, and he starts moving, and he immediately gets picked up by an owl, and flies out of frame, and you're like, oh no. It's like, oh no, that still freaks me out a bit, and again, it's very effective, but oh no, that's actually horror. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, they did not play around with those ads, and I think the fact that they didn't pull the punches was kind of a really funny what's the word I'm looking for? It was something that definitely drew me to. And it's funny because I didn't actually start with those games when those ads were airing. Because I wasn't allowed to have a video game console at the time. So I had to wait to actually get to play those games much later in life. But one of the things that really stuck with me was the ads. And so I knew when I finally got my hands on a PS3, I was like, I know which franchise I'm starting off with. And then, everything progressed since then. Gestures at Lombax's self. Yeah. So, oh, man. Awesome. Well, we've talked a bunch about Poof TF, but I do also want to talk a little bit about writing in particular, because I know that you have been quite the prolific writer over the years in terms of some of the transformation work that you've made. And so I was curious to know what kind of got you into writing transformation in the first place. It sounds like maybe it was connected to some of the Redwall stuff, but what was like the impetus to writing your first TF story?
I mean, I was doodling TF for a long time and like art for like since as long as I can remember. Literally just having a kid, a puff of smoke, and literally a dog wearing the same clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
However, like to writing TF, this is gonna sound weird, but I think I really got into writing around Lilo and Stitch in 2002. And I got really into Lilo and Stitch before it came out. And then it came out and I got into Yahoo Groups RP boards, and where it was like it was playing with the world, because like, okay, there's all these experiments, it's in space, you can make your own characters, you can play out these things, and it really captured my imagination, and it really got me into writing in the first place. And from there it got a little too weird. Like I felt like they were like, wow, they're taking this a bit too seriously for me. I still love Lilo and Stitch, but the fandom was a little crazy back then. Disney fans, I don't know. But then I went into the Redwall fandom after there, and that's a world that is, again, a really interesting world with a lot of space to explore. And they were doing this survivor writing contest where there was 10 characters and everyone took a turn writing a chapter of like with their character. And each week, when someone wrote off until like 10, 9, 8, until there's 3, and it was the same thing each week. Everyone wrote a chapter. And that really captured my imagination of like, oh, wow, you can just write your own Redwall novel? Like all these people writing this really cool new Redwall thing? And which in turn made me start competing to try and get into that, which in turn made me do Redwall fanfics and everything. And I distinctly even remember around then when I first started writing personal stories, I just loved the idea of being a dragon. And so one of my first stories I remember writing was the idea of just being a dragon and flying through the sky and the cloud and the scales and everything, and just that idea being something else. Like it always captured my imagination, but it was only around that time when writing those fanfics and stuff that I actually started like writing out those bits and pieces. Like I did, of course, the humans get brought into Redwall, turned to animals story, like you do. Yeah,
as one does when you're in the Redwall fandom. I mean,
it was always like there was like the TFE stories, and then I think there were like when I finally my first actual TF stories, kind of moving away from Redwall fanfic. There was like 3 stories. One was an Otter TF story because I read a short story that was like did really bad post Otter TF, and I'm like, no, I'm writing my own. That's gonna be actual swoopy and fun and swimming. And then I did a fursuit TF story. And then I did another one, which was somebody had a fursuit, they turned into a character. And it was funny, that one was called Not Quite Furry, because I wasn't a furry, quote unquote, because I didn't know what the distinction was and what it really meant at that time. So, and yeah.
I mean, people were also very defensive around what was and wasn't a furry. So I could also see why you were perhaps a bit reticent at the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I think people still are a little bit foolish when it comes to those labels, because I think people will try to like apply those labels to other people without knowing the context of that person or where they're coming from and their own unique relationship with said labels. So I think people are still foolish to this day about labels on the internet, and so that does not surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah. And it was interesting back then. I'm trying to think when it was. It must have been like the mid 2000s, definitely. Because I remember somebody on the Redwall forum, somebody opened a topic, hey, any furries around here? And I didn't know what that was at the time. And then when I became a college mascot, they were like, you're not furry, are you? Because the mascot was a Hannibal. And stuff like that.
Oh, gotcha.
And it's only then that I slowly started wandering in from there. And that's about the same time that I was writing those TF stories that I kind of finally, did my own TF stuff.
Yeah. Nice. I know that you've collaborated a lot more recently, too, with Lappi Fox. What has that kind of collaboration process been like?
It's been really fun because me and Lappi have very similar TF sensibilities, essentially, and sensitive humor. And we're actually coming around about 10 years. Not 10 years. No, 5 years. We're coming around on 5 years of doing collaborations. And we've done at least,
nice.
I think, I have to look back. I think at least 10 plus stories or so over that time, or maybe more or less. And essentially what it does is we just have an idea, and we essentially chat about it a bit beforehand, and then we start a Google document, and we put all those notes in of what we kind of want, and sometimes it's just like plot ideas. Sometimes it's just like little pieces of dialogue or little pieces of passages we want to fit into it, and then we kind of take turns, kind of write at the same time in the Google document about once a week at a certain time of the week. We set a time aside once a week or once every few weeks to kind of just write in the document. And we both kind of write at the same time, essentially. Like, we either one will write and just until they kind of pause, and then somebody else will pop in, or we'll go back or forward to the story to write a section of while the other person is writing. It's a little chaotic and a little weird, but we kind of make it work in the middle. Like, I mean, I've told people this, and they're like, that sounds insane. But I'm like, me and Lappi we don't think too much of it. We just kind of write the way we write, and it kind of works out in the end. And we're just always like, hey, and sometimes I'll see Lappi write a thing in the document and then erase it. I'm like, no, put that back. That was amazing. I like that part. Stuff like that. Because I just love Lappi's sensibilities, essentially. And we get to the point, it's kind of fun, that by the end of the draft, I can't quite tell a lot of times of who wrote what. And I can't even tell the distinction. There might be some moments where we go into a particular thing or a particular topic that I say, hey, that's me or Lappi. Like in a recent story, employee orientation. There's a need for lyrics in the story because there was a fake Disney ride in the story, and Lappi did the lyrics for that, and I'm like, I have no sense of lyrics, so I'm like, Lappi took control of that. It's an amazing job because Lappi's really talented with doing little poems and rhymes with TF. Like he's actually handed out at cons Lappi taffies that are full of TF jokes and TF rhymes.
I think he actually brought those one time to the MFF TF meet and greet, if I'm remembering correctly. I might be wrong, but I do remember distinctly at one of the meet and greets him handing those out. So
yeah, it's very possible. And it's kind of funny though. I'll continue.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting that you've made that kind of chaotic process work because, I mean, it's not writing. It's very much different. But I know when I've done collaborations, and again, maybe this is because it's artistic, it's very much one artist does some stuff, then you send the file to the other person does the other, sends it back, etc. So the idea of simultaneously doing it is kind of mind-boggling to me.
I don't know how it works, but we just do it. I try not to question it too much. It is.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Exactly, kind of deal. I worry if you think about it too much, you're like, oh no. But I don't know. We have fun seeing each other work and do our thing. So it's kind of funny.
Nice.
Me and Lappi, we used to live on the East Coast, but we only started being friends and really talking after I moved away back out west. So I haven't seen Lappi. I haven't seen Lappi in the fur for a long time. And the only time we didn't really know each other. I was just like, I like your TF poems, and then left immediately because I was embarrassed or nervous.
Yeah.
Because the Lappi was in fursuit. I'm like, and you can, that's what you do in fursuit. You're like, I love your suit. I love what you do. Bye.
Yeah. Oh man. Would you say, outside of maybe Lappi, what would you say are your biggest inspirations as a writer, either like other TF writers or even like non-TF writers? And how would you say they've influenced the way you kind of approach writing?
I think two of my favorite like writers who I think kind of influenced me are Douglas Adams, because of just the way he encountered writing and the way he played with like narrative structures, and like was very enlightening to me and really amazed me like when I was in middle school, like back when I first started writing. And in the same token, I really enjoyed Terry Pratchett and his Discworld series specifically, and the way he played with his worlds and characters, and his sense of humor in those too. Like they really showed me how you can play with the narrative and structure and humor and stuff. I'm like, I just love the idea that you can just kind of wander off on a tangent and just do something else in the middle of the story if you want, or just be really silly and play with like the structure and fourth wall and and the bits and pieces. And as far as TF writers, like, I mean, the TSA, I think, flavored it. And specifically, I'm like, I think it's Brian Eric Cole was this TF writer. I really loved their sense of humor. Like, especially, I feel like they're partly why I decided on a raccoon persona. Because they did this story called Questions and Answers, which is Metamorphosis, except somebody wakes up as a raccoon. And also, it's not horrifying and existentially terrible. It's just people very sensibly dealing with the aftermath of being just a feral raccoon who can talk. And he did a similar thing with a lot of his stories of just people acting sensibly in absurd situations, and also just absurd TF silly situations too. And it really connected to me at the time when I was like looking for a TF works. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. I confess I don't remember that specific story from the TSA, but it does tickle something in the back of my memory. So I'll have to go track that one down later. Would you say that there's anything that you feel makes your work kind of different or unique when compared to other people? And if so, what would you say is like the specific Geo twist that you like to add to things?
I guess I try and keep it like a quirky sensibility no matter the topic. Like, there is topics that I run across in TF. I'm like, what if I made that silly? What if I made that a little funny? What if I had characters react with this with a different way? And I'd like to, I don't know if it ever comes across, but I try and be at least a little, insert a bit of like a soft sensibility or a quirky sensibility to what I do with like the TF and how I play it out and how I tease like the perils and the details and the bits and pieces of TF.
So a little satirical, but you like to make sure there's levity in it too.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't like, I mean, I appreciate darkness and I appreciate like how, and like some dark stories, but that's not necessarily my style. And I like to kind of twist it and play with it. And like, yeah, maybe that's self-aware way in some ways, but also like, just like, I like a bit of heart, you know, in my when I'm writing TF.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, infusing that heart is one of the most important things, in the sense of, if you're just writing to see something depicted, I mean, nothing wrong with that, but then what are you really getting across? And I feel like having that sort of intentionality is something that's fairly important if you want to be a writer who is making a tangible impact on the readers who are reading your work.
I guess for some people, they're not, I don't want to put it, I think some people don't really know what it is they're doing with what they do. So they kind of lose track of it sometimes. I think when people have like an element they want to explore and then just kind of know exactly how to work with it, I don't know. I think it comes down to not just sincerity, but in this case also just comprehension. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm aware. Like, I try and write what I've always wanted to see in TF in most stories, or the way I've wanted them to play out. And I feel like in some ways it's the niche of a niche, or not, is it niche of a niche of a niche? Niche. Either one works, honestly. But, and like, yeah, or niche. Anyway. But like, I know I'm aware that I'm like, what I'm writing or what I'm exploring is that, but I'm also like, I I usually just find people who do appreciate that or do enjoy that. And so I'm like, and it makes me feel like I'm like, I kind of write for myself essentially, and if people happen to enjoy it along the way, it's neat. It's cool. It's fun. And it's kind of fun to find out there is people out there who are looking for a similar thing that I like to explore and partake of.
Hell yeah. Would you say there's any themes of yours that you always find yourself returning to as well, in terms of weaving through like be it like some sort of like a morality story or like, self-discovery, any other themes that like really stick out to what you like to write?
I think a thing I've always kind of come back to is usually like, well, self-discovery, but also like identity is a big thing I like to play with, and like how characters deal with being something else, whether it be being an animal or an inanimate object, and how they mentally come to terms with that new status quo. Do they lead into it? Do they fight it? Do they end up liking it? Essentially, like, and just playing with how that plays out. Like, I can see that even back in like my old Redwall story, because they don't, that like where the humans one becomes a good species, one becomes a bad species, and playing with that, and like with how they come to terms with being those characters in this world and how they deal with the status quo, and it's just how they become themselves as that new person or that new form. And it was the same then, it's the same now, and like I can see that a lot in my stories of just the people being something else. And they rarely turn back into my TF stories, I don't think, because it's just, usually it ends with them coming to a turning point of realizing of who they want to be as this new form, essentially. Not always, but a lot. It's something consistent enough that I think it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that's a good topic to focus on. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, specifically, I did a kind of a personal, but more personal than the usual story, kind of a post-TF story called Coming Out, about someone who is coming out to their family about being a North American river otter, because they've recently changed into a North American river otter. And it's the aftermath of that, and him and his friend essentially talking through that aftermath, and him kind of talking about who he is, who he wants to be, and how he wanted, that's a very serious ultimate, like, I think, like, it feels like kind of a culmination of a lot of my TF stories in that story. Like, it's very personal, but also I feel like it does speak to what I love in TF, of people using it to be themselves sometimes, and like to be a different version or more of themselves sometimes, whether intentionally or not.
It's good. I think it happens to everybody who creates anything, because there's always a little piece of you. How much you decide to make it about you varies, but yeah, I can see that. Also makes me just think of wrestling too, because I've always, well, not always, but for a long time I've been aware that one of the ways to approach what makes a really good wrestling personality is to take an aspect of yourself, or just take yourself and turn it all the way up. And yeah, that works a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's deeply interesting. Yeah, that completely makes sense. You have to have some truth there that you have to write out when you're creating.
Yep. That's that was also the thing that compounds that is the thing that it's the whole contention of wrestling's not real, and I forgot who it was that said it, but I know it was passed along by somebody that I listened to a lot, and the quote is something like, "I can't make people believe that wrestling is real, but I can make them believe that I'm real," and that sticks with me a lot.
Yeah, because they're telling a story, they're portraying a character, and they're speaking to an audience.
Yeah. But it's like the character part is the part that you blur the line with, because if you're playing a character and people get that sense, then you can kind of lose them. They can get bored or tuned out or something. But if they think that's genuine, now there's something to see. Who is that? What is going on? That's weird. That's interesting. That's amazing. That's terrifying. That's disgusting. That's abhorrent. You get those emotions stirring, and that's if you really lean into it. If you're going to be in it, put yourself out there for what it's worth.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that people should be less afraid to put themselves out there, because that's the way you get the best results at the end of the day. You will get out whatever you put in, and if you're not putting in much, you're not going to get much out of it. So
yeah,
that's true.
Just
awesome.
It's the whole like be yourself type thing. It comes off as like really trite advice because it doesn't really give you an idea of how to do that or best way to do that or anything like that. But at the very least, that's one of the ways to express why it's worth doing. Although how to be yourself, that's a different topic altogether for a different day.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard, and I think what's interesting is that playing with TF, you can find out what that means, or explore that with characters of what that can mean to be yourself.
Yeah.
Of course, because it's a very literal way of saying this is what this is, and just being able to work with people's perceptions of whatever that is supposed to be once you're in that form or presents a certain way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we did have some audience questions that I wanted to make sure that we left time to get into. And the first one is actually specifically for me, because this is the same question asker who had one specifically for Libra last episode. So this is from Leaf Wine. And they ask, or pose the idea that Libra, you have tampered with my collection of tails somehow, and now every tail will modify my body in a specific way, but also cause a personality shift. And the question to me is, what do my favorite 3 plus the one I'm currently wearing do to my personality? So full disclosure, not that anyone can see it, I'm wearing my cheetah tail right now, so that'll have to be one of them. If I had to pick a personality change for the ones that I wear the most often, I guess when it comes to cheetah, I would like to think that I would be a bit more decisive. Like obviously speed is something that cheetahs are famed for, but I would like to think that that would also potentially help me make decisions more quickly, because that's something I agonize over a lot. And hey, maybe you're not always going to pick the right thing, but if you make it quickly, you're going to waste less time making a decision. So I'd say that one would make me more decisive overall in terms of a personality. I think my Lombax one would definitely kind of up the ante on any sort of like bold or brashness in my personality. I think I have to pick 2 more. Okay, I'll pick Raccoon because we have Geo here.
Woo.
I think Raccoon would definitely make me more mischievous. Also would definitely amplify the what's the word? I have an inclination to get up to shenanigans, so to speak, just in general, and potentially do things that perhaps it's not the best idea, but I want to, so I'm going to. I feel like that would be amplified by a raccoon tail. This is making me feel like I'm picking favorite children. Okay, I guess the last one I'll have to pick is Snep, because if I have to pick the Snep tail. What would Snep make me? I guess that one would, in many senses, perhaps make me a bit more goofy. I feel like that's something that gets associated with a lot of Snep stuff, because they are very silly sometimes, grabbing onto their tails with their mouths and, reacting in very silly ways. So I would say it would make me more of a goofy kind of person.
Okay, there you go. You got all the things that I'm apparently responsible for.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about changing me like that, Libra?
I don't know. Somebody else can write a story and make me feel uncomfortable about it. I don't know. The funny thing is, I have been to your house several times, but I've never really just seen your tails laid out. I couldn't even find them to fuck with them, because I don't really know where you keep them. I'd have to look for them. I'd also have to break into your house first, because it ain't a very big house and you'll find me.
That's true. I will say that this is perhaps a latent raccoon technique, but my tails are all squirreled away in different areas of my house, so it might be a challenge to find all of them, which I think is deliciously funny. It's like a scavenger hunt, but for tails. I mean, there's 17 of them. I can't put them all in the same spot. Like, I don't have like a display rack for them. Perhaps I will at some point, but not in the space that I currently live in. So you would have to search through all my closets to find them all.
Some people have
thing.
skeletons,
Find
some
all
people
the
have
closets.
tails.
Yes,
thought about, like, a chimera,
it has
like
definitely
a
come up
Kitsune
before. The
deal?
thing
Like,
that
they
I
have
keep saying I'm
a
going to do,
variety
and then
of
I
different
keep
tails at
forgetting,
the
and then I
same
keep getting
time,
more tails, so
switch
it's going to be
between
more
forms
difficult
and
when I
stuff.
eventually get to it,
I'm
is
sure
take a
it's fun.
picture wearing all of my tails. At this point, I will need 2 belts at a minimum to stack them vertically, because there's no way I would be able to fit all of them on one belt. And I don't even know if 2 belts would be enough, because again, I have 17 tails at this point. So it will be a bit of a challenge, but I keep telling myself I'm going to do that eventually. And then I keep forgetting. Eventually I will do that. And I think there's a lot to be said, at least in terms of the kind of potential chimera combinations you could get out of wearing 2 or more of them at the same time. So
There you go.
hell yeah. The next question I have is from Postal Roo, and this was sparked by a comment in our last episode about Sonic 06, and he asks, specifically for Libra, but for all of us, what is the worst game you've ever played?
I've played some really, I don't know, I've played games that I felt were really fucking bad, but it's just like, I feel like the worst games I could play are still out there, but I steer clear of those pretty effectively. You know what's funny? I don't think it's the worst game I've played. Oh, actually, no, wait. Oh, I think I know. I'll give you 2. I'll give you the one I thought of first, but the one I think is the worst game I've played so far was Sonic and the Black Knight. And the reason being is I did not want to play past the tutorial level. It felt really fucking bad. Really, really goddamn bad. Actually, no, wait. I'm sorry. No. I will tell you, the worst game for me, and I still beat it, pretty much out of spite at that point, was Metroid Other M. That game...
Ah, yes.
Everybody can complain about the same things. I don't want to get into it too much. The point is that game was brain dead. I felt there was nothing to fucking threaten me. It was really stupid for a number of reasons. It is a game that I pirated, played 3 days early, beat it, and I wanted my money back. That is how it made me feel. That is how that made me feel. No other game has made me feel like I deserve a refund for something that I did not pay for. Mm-hmm. You know? That being said, yeah, fuck that game. Fuck it. Oh. But yeah, Sonic and the Black Knight, I did not want to play past the tutorial, but the honorable mention was my first thought was the bouncer. And the reason the bouncer is so bad to me is because I had no idea how they wanted you to play that game. It did not flow well at all for a game where you're supposed to fight a bunch of guys. I had no idea what the story was, and the one thing I remember is that some chick turns into a panther out of nowhere for no fucking reason as a boss for a level, and I'm like, fine, that was cool, but what? And I don't know what the story was, and I don't know what the point was. Yeah, so yes, I'll give that to Other M. Is it the worst mechanically? Is it like fucking broken and all that kind of stuff? No, but it is deeply forgettable. It's deeply forgettable. The only things I remember are the worst things about it, and I also just think that it almost tanked the entire fucking series and practically got really close to ruining Samus. See, I could just bloviate on. Yeah, it's Metroid Other M for me. Fuck that game. Anybody else?
So I have an answer that'll get some controversy going. So I've definitely played worse games, but I'm going to mention a different one because it stands out in my mind as the game I despise the most, and so I think that can take the trophy. So Nier Automata, I despise that game. I really, really, really hate that game. And part of the reason why is because it actually starts out pretty solidly. It's got an interesting story. It's got an interesting setting. interesting mechanics, lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions. And as you play through it, you get to like the first ending and then the second ending, and there's all these different endings. But the further that you go into the game, the more the actual like tangible elements stop making sense, and you realize, oh, this is one of those metaphor games. Which, like, fine. That's fine. But don't like lead me in thinking one thing and then swerve into another. That's one thing I really dislike in a game. And then second of all, don't make it a metaphor or pretentious like kind of bullshit that doesn't make any sense. I sat there as two anime girls were screaming at each other in the sky and then also killing themselves, ? And I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I wasting my time on this game? I don't like this. So I got to like the ending for that part, and apparently there's more after that, and I literally had no desire to return to it in the slightest. I will never play that game again. It was a complete waste of my time, and it was a waste of the talent of a lot of people who put in a lot of hard work and love into that game, because there are some actually genuinely very good things in that game, but I can't touch it because it ends in bullshit, and I just have no patience for that. So that's the one I'm going to mention.
Damn shame. I do want to play that game someday. I'm just flatly curious about it. It just seems like it could be fun, but I've heard things about Nier in general. And the first game, yeah, it's just meant to be that kind of really fucks with your head kind of story. Like you're not really meant to, not expected to get it at all. It just is a thing. And so I guess it did what it was meant to, but I'll form an opinion one day.
Yeah. How about you, Gio?
I'm kind of a disadvantage because I never grew up with video games.
They do.
Essentially. And even now, I still don't play that many games. And most of the games I play are enjoyable. I guess
that's
visual
okay.
novels count as games.
Oh.
Okay. I'm not going to say too much about this one. No, it was from 10 years ago. It's not a recent novel. It was major minor. And I'm not going to say much because the fandom is small, and I'm sure there's people who really enjoy that game. However, the execution of particular plot twists annoyed me a lot. And it just annoyed me so much in ways that still make me angry. And I don't remember a lot of plot points of that story, but I do know how angry it made me. And there is one ending that still makes me angry. I'm not going to go into here because, again, I don't want to drag it too much because,
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of passion and effort and stuff put into that game. And I'm sure
Hope Springs Eternal. I haven't played it, but I did play or watch someone play through the opening, and I couldn't even get past that. So honestly,
maybe it'll be better.
I don't even need to play the rest. I believe you.
Yeah. I put 12 hours in that game, and I was so angry. I was so mad by the end. I was like, I was kind of invested. That was the funny part. I was semi-invested. I was kind of getting into it. I'm like, okay, where is this going? What is the motivation of any of these people? And when it was all revealed, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No.
It's
what?
fine. It's fine.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Anyway, it's fine. If we need to cut,
yeah.
I'm sure it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. So, I mean, my other backup was the ski-free game back in the day when the Yeti scared me the heck as a kid, but that was like elementary school.
Oh my gosh. The last question I have here is
Meteorological vengeance.
from Max Velocity, and it's actually kind of a pre-TF question in a sense. So the scenario here is you have 2 hours before you're going to undergo a very, very large and very disruptive transformation, such as a Western dragon, a chimera, a kaiju, something else similarly monstrous. What specific preparation steps would you take in advance of this change happening, assuming you have heads up of it's going to happen at this exact time 2 hours in the future?
If I know what it's going to be, I'm going to put myself in the most reasonably secure place possible. Let the people I most trust, just know everything. And let's see. If I can be contained and if there's a way back or whatever, then okay. But if I cannot, I might as well be far away from the people that I care about so that, I don't know, either someone else can take the hit, or maybe I don't attack anybody. I don't know. It really depends. Maybe drop me somewhere in DC or something, so a disaster will happen.
Well, this may as well happen. That's a fun way to play it out.
Gotta take advantage.
It's up to all of you to deal with it now, Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm effed, why not just have fun
exactly.
with it, I guess?
No, I dig that. I think at least on my end, man, I don't know. That was a really good answer. I don't know if I can top that now. I think at least what I would probably do is make sure that if there's any last minute affairs that I should be getting in order, I will do that. And that will probably take a decent amount of time. And then, I mean, depending on what it might be, I might want to actually like properly enjoy it. So I might just fucking book it out of Toronto and just be like, let me get as far out as I can, so I'm not bothered more than anything. But that would be kind of it, I think.
I mean, you got your priorities scoped out reasonably enough, I guess. Geo, you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think same route. I mean, essentially, that my first thought is to get the Dodge out of town. Essentially, I guess I'm lucky enough that the wilderness isn't like 20 minutes away in any direction, so I could get out to like the middle of nowhere relatively easy. Whether it be I have the mountains as an option, something big can get lost out there for a while and make do. The salt flats I probably wouldn't, because that would just be like, wow, you can see that from hundreds of miles away. What's that out there? But essentially, along the way, it would be like calling as many people as I could to kind of give them lay land of, okay, this is happening. I'm going to be here. I'm heading this direction. Try and give as many people a general like awareness of something's about to happen. Yeah. As possible along the way, and kind of go to a place where there's the space to kind of figure out the logistics from there.
Yeah. No.
So try and like, find the space to like deal with the immediate aftermath.
Hell yeah. Yes. That makes sense to me. Awesome. Well, that was all the questions that I had. I don't know, Geo, if you had any questions for us potentially.
Oh gosh. I mean, I guess a thing from earlier. Probably somebody's asked this before. Like, does body swap count as TF?
It depends.
Yeah, I think it does. It's not necessarily my favorite trope to explore, but I think there is definitely a mental perception change, if anything, because, now you have to adjust to a new body and yada, yada, yada. I guess, like, again, it doesn't have kind of like the process, so to speak, that perhaps a lot of us look for, but at the same time, you still end up having to explore a lot of like new, bodily functions and all that good stuff. So I think it still counts.
Yeah, I mean, I asked because I think my first love was swap, and then I transitioned to TF as time went on because there's not much animal body swap content out there. But there's a lot of animal TF content out there, which leads to post TF, which is a big element of what I loved about body swap back then, because I mean, if you like Help I'm Trapped in Obedience School, the old cover, gosh, that thing, I saw that Scholastic book fair, captured my imagination. But the best part about the book is like, it's very silly. I wouldn't recommend going to it. But the part that I loved was the part where he swapped his best friend with his dog, and his dog didn't want to. His friend didn't want to go back. His friend wanted to stay a dog, and he had to struggle to make it, and there was something about that really captured my imagination of just the idea of being something else and liking it more than being a human, and kind of indulging in that was super interesting to me. Also, there's a body horror teleportation accident at the end of the book where there's two dog-human hybrids for a moment.
That sounds a little too Vix-like.
Yeah, anyway. It was pretty crazy because they're doing the body swap and then they get hit by lightning and there's just two half dog, half human things there and they have to separate them.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe someone on Star Trek got some inspiration. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. The Fly, well, I never saw the 80s Fly, but the 50s Fly was inspirational to me because I'm like, what if there were the other animal besides the Fly? But I mean, I don't know. Swap is interesting and always a first love and always a old love of mine when it comes to
Hell yeah.
Always held near and dear to my heart.
Transformation, because I think of the the just making one thing into another. It bypasses that. Like transferring a consciousness isn't changing the body in that kind of way, but then it's kind of semantic. I guess if I think about it like too much, it's a thought experiment to say whether or not it counts. But sometimes, like, if you're just switching consciousness, then you haven't really changed anything, but you have exchanged something. I don't know. It's like all too particular. You could logic out like both of them, I think, if you really fucking wanted to be just pedantic about it. It just depends. But if you but while you were talking about old stories that you really enjoyed, I remember season 1 of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. That has something of interest for you there.
I know about the element because I hear these elements and I search them out, and I'm like, there's so many shows I've seen only a clip of because there's body swap or TF in them, and I've seen nothing else of these shows. But I'm like, well, I know about that part. There's essentially horror part in that.
I think
one.
for Dirk Gently, you would actually enjoy the show because that one thing is pretty much a huge part of the entire story in that season. The entire season has everything to do with that.
Yeah, what I keep meaning I should probably watch because it's based off a Douglas Adams book, and that's one of my first inspirations when it comes to writing. So I probably would appreciate the humor and the weirdness of the story too. So I need to give it a
try.
Yeah, Dirk Gently is a good show. I think people should give it a watch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Geo, for coming on the podcast. If people are looking for your stuff online, where can they find you?
They can find me on Blue Sky at GeoHolms. It's Holmes without the E. Also on For Affinity at GeoHolms. And most places at GeoHolms at this time. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. It was great to have you come by. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope that y'all had a good time listening to it and getting to hear all of the wacky hijinks that Poof TF and such can get you into. But in the meantime, I hope that you all continue to check out Ratchet and Clank, keep an open mind, and stay TFy. And we'll see you back here again next week.
Just want to know, think about whether it counts as Poof TF if you transform in the dark and then all you get to see is the end.
Makes you think.
I mean, we've discussed that in like the presentation. People were like, if you wake up, but go to sleep as one form, wake up as another, is that Poof TF? And I'm like,
if somebody's not, if you can't see it, but all the painstaking changes, whatever. But that's the end of the episode. Bye.